Good Thursday afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. A little later in the show, we will talk some Guardians struggling to get things going. They will start their longest home streak of the season tomorrow against the Twins. But we begin with some Browns news. The Browns reached a contract agreement with a veteran free safety. Rodney McLeod will soon be 33 years old. McLeod was part of that Super Bowl team in Philadelphia that won the Super Bowl with Jim Schwartz as the defensive coordinator. Again, he'll soon be 33 years old. In 2022, among qualifying safeties, Rodney McLeod was pretty good. Second in coverage grade, this according to PFF. Fourth in positive play percentage allowed, and 12th in EPA per target allowed. Let's welcome in Tom Withers, longtime reporter for the Associated Press. And Tom, they needed a veteran safety, and McLeod's a pretty good one.
Yeah, he had a really nice bounce back kind of year last year, Dave. Kind of a, resurrected his career, if you will. Played exceptionally well for the Colts. I just talked to one of my colleagues out in Indianapolis to get a little bit of a scouting report on him. So, yeah, he did a nice job for them. Obviously, the Browns needed some depth there. The Browns needed a veteran there. The Browns needed somebody who knows Jim Schwartz's system back there. And obviously, McLeod checks all those boxes. So, yeah, I think it's a really nice pickup. They have obviously big plans and big hopes for Grant Delpit, who unfortunately hasn't been able to stay healthy the last couple of years. And the addition of Juan Thornhill obviously gives them somebody with a great track record, championship pedigree back there as well. But McLeod is a really nice pickup for 1 year, and then you see where it goes from there. Yeah,
without question. And we mentioned we're connecting the dots with Jim Schwartz. So this was Jim Schwartz. He knows exactly what's getting Rodney McLeod. Back in 2019, when Rodney McLeod played for Jim Schwartz, was coming off an injury. This is Jim Schwartz talking about Rodney McLeod getting back on the field for the Eagles from 2019.
He's such a calming influence on our team, on our defense in particular, and he does such a good job of communicating and executing the scheme. And it was good to have him back out there. We look forward to a great year from him. Just like, some guys are like super rah-rah guys, like getting guys jacked up. He's one of those guys that, everybody just knows it's going to be okay when he's in there. And I think there's an important part of that too. He's stone cold with his communication. He's always in the right spot, do his job. I mean, those guys are valuable. Not everybody has to be, rah-rah. Sometimes it's, a combination of that. And not that Rodney doesn't play with a lot of fire, he does. But I think when he's back there, his corners, his nickels, his linebackers, they all get a nice sense of calm because he's such a good communicator. He keeps them ahead of problems on the defense and puts everybody in good position.
Tom, the reason I play that is Browns fans love to hear that because there were a lot of guys that were not in position a season ago.
Yeah, you can play that same clip, I think, when the Browns have camp and they introduced Rodney McLeod, right? I think that's exactly what they needed out there. We've talked about that the last couple of years. John Johnson did fill that role, and obviously he was coming here from a championship situation in Los Angeles. But here's a guy who knows the new coordinator better than anybody, and he's going to be able to convey that message that Jim Schwartz is trying to get across to guys in the meeting rooms and on the practice field. So, yeah, really an ideal pickup. Let's be honest, as much as last year was about not having Deshaun Watson on the field for 11 weeks, that defense woefully underperformed, and it began at the beginning of the season with the communication breakdowns in the secondary. So I think having an anchor back there like him, a guy who's made 138 career starts in the NFL, is a perfect addition for a team that still has some needs, but has definitely checked off a lot of the boxes in this offseason.
Yeah, and still playing at a high level. We showed you the grades from a season ago, so 33, but still playing at a high level. Let's take a look.
33 is young.
Yeah, I'm with you, Tom. I feel you. In football terms, not so much. Don't know that I would be able to chase some guys down that he might have to.
Very true, but you got to remember too that he's not necessarily going to be coming in a starting role, right? He's going to be kind of that backup and from what I understand, Schwartz has all kinds of different looks he tries to throw out there on defense. So they're going to move people around. Delpit is also one of those guys who you look at and he doesn't necessarily look like a safety as much as he does an outside linebacker. So, he's one of those interchangeable parts, I think, along with, JOK that Schwartz wants to get his hands on and move some people around. So not going to be surprised if I see all three of those safeties out there at times.
Yeah, I would agree. Let's take a look at the safety room. And again, you have Delpit and Thornhill. D'Anthony Bell was, an undrafted free agent that came up and hit people. Now you got McLeod. Hickman is an intriguing undrafted free agent from this year, and Bubba Bolden as well. I'm with you. I'm interested to see Grant Delpit being coached up by Jim Schwartz in this scheme, and Jeremiah Wusu-Koromo. Those are guys who have they have skills that I think have been untapped.
And on top of that, and you mentioned Bell as well. I mean, those are also guys that are going to be big on special teams for this team, right? That's that safety position are typically where you find your gunners. Sometimes, obviously, guys are going to be able to be out in space and make tackles. So I'm all interested in the Ronnie Hickman undrafted free agent signing from Ohio State. He had some nice moments down there. And so, yeah, they've really upgraded, again, what was a really kind of, especially once John Johnson was gone, there really wasn't a whole lot back there. So, kudos to Andrew Berry and for their scouts and for their front office for doing what they needed to do.
All right, so earlier this week, Attorney Tony Buzbee said that he intends to take the Deshaun Watson case to trial for Lauren Baxley civil suit in Houston. Again, Tom, it's one as opposed to the mess that it was, but it's still something that I probably think the Browns and Deshaun Watson would like to get out of the way.
Yeah, and this could be posturing by Buzbee as well, kind of putting the pressure on that side to try to get to a settlement by threatening, to take it to trial. There's always negotiations going on between both sides, outside of the public realm. This is what goes on in these kinds of cases. So, to your point, I think, obviously it is something that the Browns would like to have go away completely, but let's be honest, it's never going to go away completely. It is always going to be a part of Deshaun Watson and his story. I spent all of last year writing about the potential suspension and then the suspension and then Deshaun Watson coming back from the suspension. And now he's a little further removed from the suspension, but it is always, going to be part of his story. So, you hope it gets settled. You hope this doesn't affect Deshaun Watson too negatively. I still worry about this long layoff. I mean, we all talked last year about whatever it was, 700 days between starts. Well, this is now a guy who has only played 6 games in the last 3 years. So, I still think there's going to be some rust there. I'm still not sure he ever gets back to that elite level that the Browns thought they were getting when they signed him to that historic contract. So, listen, the distractions have been minimized, but there are still some out there.
Yeah, and, to your point, they need him to be pretty darn elite if they're going to get where they want to. I mean, you look at the landscape in the AFC, and there's a lot of really talented quarterbacks.
Yeah, I have a hard time, even putting him in the top 5 most times when you're asked to rank them. And let's be honest, that thing is pretty interchangeable. It can kind of change on a week-to-week basis. But, when you see the emergence of a guy like Trevor Lawrence, who suddenly is in the conversation, and, Justin Herbert, and, you go right down the line, beginning with Mahomes, who to me is in a class all by himself in the AFC with Burrow, with Lamar Jackson is staying, which I wasn't surprised at. So, yeah, it's really tough to picture Deshaun in that top 5, but that's what the Browns need from him. They need him to get back to that 2020 level of where he was throwing for 4,400 yards and 40 touchdowns or whatever it was. He needs to play at a high level, and that's why they went out and got him, and you just got to hope for the best.
Tom Withers, reporter from the Associated Press, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason and take a look at some fifth-year option news you'll want to see. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Tom Withers from the Associated Press. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Tony Frost, Toledo, Ohio, longtime Browns fan. I just want to say this about the Browns picking up the fifth-year option as far as Jedrick Wills goes. I think Jedrick Wills is a good left tackle for the Browns. We got so used to Joe Thomas and his elite status that we try to put Jedrick on that same level. And Joe Thomas is special. So I think that was a good move by us, keeping Jedrick, and I hope that Mr. Callahan can keep motivating him to follow through the plays. And, you know, he's not Joe, but he's solid. That's all I got to say as far as Jedrick Wills go. You know, he's still young, and, you know, once he matures into a real pro, he might be another Joe. Go Browns. Woof, woof.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Tom, I understand picking up the fifth-year option. Where were you going to turn? The question that people that didn't want to pick up the fifth-year option, and keep in mind, I think it's 14,175 or something along those, is below average for a left tackle at this point.
Right. Still the second most important position on the field, one could argue, right? And yeah, the Joe Thomas store is not open to go buy left tackle. So yeah, this was a smart move. You know, everybody we've talked to with the Browns, and I include the coaches and Jed's teammates, really thought that he played pretty well last year. You know, there are some moments where, you know, does he miss a block? Sure. Does he false start? Who doesn't? But I thought he did a pretty good job, and you know, he was able to play through some of those kind of nicky injuries that maybe had kept him off the field the first couple of years. I think he played 15 of 17 games. I don't have it here in front of me, but you know, he was pretty dependable. And I thought, you know, there were times where I was like, wow, you know, Wills looks terrible. There was none of that. And you know, in Bill Callahan, you have arguably, and I'm not even sure if it's arguable anymore, the best offensive line coach in the NFL. And he's been trying to work with Jed the last couple of years. I think we've seen some progress. The Browns want to see some more. But to your point, Dave, I mean, it's contractually, it's an easy one for them to do. You hope he then takes another step this year. And then you think about, you know, potentially him being your long-term answer at left tackle. And I think the caller before makes a very good point. You know, we kind of took it for granted for that decade or more when we had big number 73 here. We didn't have to worry about that left tackle, and we all know how important it is in protecting a quarterback's blind side. So I think it was a safe move, Dave. I think it was the smart move at this time. And like I said, you just have to hope that Jed continues to improve.
Yeah, and Joe Thomas, a first ballot Hall of Famer. Those guys don't come along very often. This is also very interesting. So this is fifth-year options. Since their inception in 2011, 2011 was the first class. The Browns have the sixth lowest. They've only picked it up 47% of the time. So fifth-year options are only for first-year picks. So let's take a look at why the Browns have the sixth lowest. And there's some really struggling draft picks that were picked in the
Bad
first
picks,
round.
yeah.
Yeah, Phil Taylor, Trent Richardson, Brandon Weeden, Barkevius Mingo, Justin Gilbert, and Johnny Manziel in the same draft. Danny Shelton, Cameron Irving, Corey Coleman. You finally get to Myles Garrett. You had Peppers and Njoku, who they did. I mean, that's why they rank. The thing that's shocking there is, Tom, there's actually 5 teams that have picked up the 5th-year option less than the Browns. And it's, again, it's only first-round picks, but they shouldn't have picked up the 5th-year option for most of those guys.
100% right. And that's why, that's why we're in the state that we're in, right? That's why we've been through 23 years of mostly pain and suffering in Cleveland with only 2 playoff appearances. So it has been bad draft picks. And so, I think when you get a kid like Jedrick Wills, who, came in highly touted, was the number 10 pick overall, was an All-American at Alabama. Personally, I'm the kind of guy that when it's my turn on the board, it's best Alabama player available. And if not him, if not that guy, then a guy from Georgia or Ohio State. You can't go wrong. Jedrick Wills comes in. They move him from right tackle to left tackle. He's more than held his own. And so, as I said before, I think this is a real wise decision considering where this team is right now.
And the other thing is he was hurt a couple of years ago, most of the year, and tried to play through it. So I'm with you. This is also something that we found out. DeAndre Swift wanted to be traded from the Lions, and the Browns did, in fact, try to acquire DeAndre Swift. Couldn't get the trade done before the Eagles did. Along those very same lines, the Browns have had contact with free agent running back Justin Jackson. The career backup has never eclipsed the 500-yard mark, but he's had a career average of 4.9 yards a carry, is really good in the passing game, has been playing behind Austin Eckler, which is one of the reasons that he hasn't gotten the main ball-carrying thing. Tom, when you look at that, I think they need to go find a veteran running back. And again, they may not play him. They may play him in passing downs. Nick Chubb is good. I know they like Jerome Ford. But if one of those guys gets banged up and you want to run the football, I'd feel a lot better about having somebody who's done it at the NFL level.
I'll be honest with you. I've been expecting all week for them to sign a running back. It could happen at any moment now. I think that's exactly what Andrew Berry has been up to. Not only during the draft and before it, but clearly after it. He's trying to address that running back depth, because that is definitely an issue. And when you start to talk about, we start talking about long-term deals and how long some of these guys are going to be around here. Nick Chubb's not going to be here for forever. And they do like Ford, who they picked up last year, did a really nice job in returning kicks. The Kareem Hunt boat has sailed. Dearness Johnson is not here anymore. There is definitely a need for a running back or two, and I think that's the way to go. And listen, there are rumors out there all the time about who the Browns have talked to in terms of running backs, because that's what Andrew Berry does. I mean, he's making phone calls every day, be it to agents or to teams, to try to fix that depth. So I'm fully expecting them to have a running back or two here signed within the next week.
Yeah, I would agree. Along those lines, here's a list of some of the names that are still out there, and these are guys that are free agent running backs that have played 15% of the snaps for the teams they were on, 15% or more in 2022. You got Fournette and Elliott and Hunt. Not sure about them. Kenyon Drake intrigues me. Henderson is a guy that, when he was used with the Rams, had some success. Burkhead is a guy that is effective in the passing game. Ingram, McKissick, Dontrell Hilliard. We've talked about Justin Jackson, Ty Johnson, who kind of got pushed out there by the Jets. Any of those names intrigue you?
Yeah, I think they all do. I'll be honest with you. I mean, there's some big names on there. You're looking at a couple of former NFL rushing leaders on there, a couple of first-round draft picks. So I think this speaks, Dave, to what you were speaking of, what you were saying about before with 5th-year options. This also speaks to the shelf life of running backs, right? And it's why I know everybody had their were pretty upset last year with whether it was Stefanski or whoever you wanted to blame about Nick Chubb not getting as many carries as you wanted him to. And the same for Kareem Hunt. There's a reason for that. It's because running backs just don't have a long shelf life in the NFL. It's a tough position. You take a pounding. There's only so many carries that are in everybody. So, it's a really interesting list. I think there's a couple of names there that they're definitely going to kick the tires on, and whether or not they get a deal or not done, that remains to be seen.
Tom Withers from the Associated Press and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we will continue talking Browns. We'll take a look at this draft class. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Tom Withers from the Associated Press. Browns wrapped up what, by all experts, quote unquote experts, felt was a pretty good draft. Here's a little bit of a measurable for it. So this is most value over expected in the 2023 draft class based on Daniel Jeremiah's top 150 prospects. So if a guy was on Daniel Jeremiah's board listed at 47 and he lasted longer, it's more valuable. That's basically it. So the Colts were 39% above expected. They were the best. Buccaneers, number 2. Steelers, number 3. And the Browns check in at 4 with 23.7% value over expected draft position on that big board of 150. Tom, I think that is even more impressive when you consider they weren't picking until 74.
Yeah, I thought they did a good job. Some of those numbers kind of give me a headache. I'm not exactly sure what they're after.
We apologize for math.
I kind of lean back on my, the proven eye test and, what conference did the guy play in? What is his character like? I mean, we've been through too many drafts here to get too caught up in grades and percents and what have you. I mean, you pointed out some names from the past before that we all thought were nice picks at the time. So, I thought they did a good job. I think, everybody was saying it was a little bit underwhelming, but I think when you go into a draft and you don't have a first and second round pick, when that pick comes up, you have to think about, okay, what did they get at that first pick? So Deshaun Watson was their first round pick. Their second round pick was Elijah Moore, who they traded for from the Jets. So it's a roundabout way of looking at it and reminding yourself that you're in the position you're in because of other moves. But I thought by and large they addressed some needs. I still think there is a bit of a hole at linebacker that I'd like to see addressed that wasn't in the draft. But again, that's what Andrew Berry does. They definitely have, it appears to me anyway, a shift in philosophy in terms of how they want their defense to look and how they want it to play. I mean, there was an effort to get bigger. There's going to be more moves down the road here. But I thought, given where they were picking, as you said before, at number 74, I thought they did a really nice job.
So this is from Pro Football Focus, most improved defensive lines in the 2023 NFL Draft. One of them is the Browns. While Ika is a nose tackle, he's a better pass rusher than you'd expect for a 358-pounder. Registered 76.4 pass rush grade in 2022. top 25 mark among interior defenders from a Power 5 school. Drafting edge rusher Isaiah McGuire in the 4th round was another smart move by the Browns. Former Missouri standout won 17.6% of his pass rushing snaps registered. Defensive stop 9.8 of his run defensive snaps past season. Again, didn't have high draft picks. The other thing you could tell by the way Jim Schwartz interacted with Ika, he was thrilled and he thinks there's something there he can unlock.
Yeah, let's be honest, there was nowhere to go but up with that defensive line, right? I mean, that was a rough season last season. I think people need to be reminded, too, as well, is that Ika started at LSU, so he does have, and he started as a freshman there. So, you know, he does have SEC pedigree, which is, to me, huge. I think we've seen that out of Andrew Berry the last couple of years. You know, he's taken players from big programs and big Power 5 conferences for a reason. Those are typically your better players, right? So, yeah, you know, I'm intrigued by McGuire. I've heard nothing but good things about him. He's got, you know, he fits that size profile. You know, I still think they really want to see what they've got already on hand. I mean, they still want to see is Isaiah Thomas a guy that can go to another level? And I think they're still holding out hope that Jordan Elliott's got another gear there. Tommy Togiai is a guy who, when he got on the field last year, he actually made some plays, and he was brought in here, you know, as a 6th round pick. I think it was 5th or 6th round the year before as a developmental guy. And you started to see last year some of the signs of growth and you know, him getting on the field and doing positive things. So again, I'll go back to it, Dave. You know, to me, Jim Schwartz was the biggest acquisition of this offseason. They needed to fix that defense. He's a guy with a proven track record of fixing defenses, of having a Super Bowl caliber defense. So again, I really like what they did up front, and I think you know, the proof will be in the pudding, but definitely a good start.
Yeah, I would agree. The other thing, so Pro Football Focus, most improved offensive lines through the draft, and the Browns are on that list as well. They take DeWand Jones in the 4th round. Browns drafted 2 offensive linemen. It's entirely possible that neither one will start in 2023, but it's equally likely that they have just future-proofed one of the best offensive lines in football, giving them the flexibility to get younger and cheaper without suffering a major drop in performance. Ohio State's offensive line was pretty darn good, and you got 2/5 of it.
Ohio State's offensive line was really good last year. I thought it was, you know, if not the best in the country, definitely in the top 3. So, yeah, and again, you know, people around here were wringing their hands for years. How come they never take any Buckeyes? I think they had only taken 4 since the expansion era began, and here they go. They take 2 in the same draft for the first time since 1965. So that'll quiet down a little bit of Buckeye Nation for a minute. That loves the Browns as well. So, you know, DeWand Jones, I think, is a really interesting pick, Dave. You know, this is a guy who, as an Ohio State alum myself, you know, watched him week in and week out. And, you know, you can't teach 6'8", 380. And there were times where he would absolutely maul opponents just on sheer force and size. And then, you know, he had his struggles as well. You know, he was called for false starts now and again because, you know, I think also when you're 6'8", 380, everything you do seems to stand out a little bit. So he's got some growing to do. Again, I think it's a guy that they want to get Bill Callahan to put his hands on him and see what he can mold this kid into. There have been some questions about his work ethic and his passion for football. You know, this is a kid that had D1 basketball scholarship offers, and that was his first true love, and kind of, you know, fell back on football as something to take up the time when basketball wasn't going on. So, you know, you get him in here, you get him to buy into what you're doing, you get him to realize that he could become a very, very rich man by becoming a starting offensive lineman in the NFL. We've seen the Browns tend to take care of their offensive linemen, right? They've given the contract extensions to damn near every one of them. So you hope that gives a spark to Jones, and you see where it goes from there. As far as Whippler's concerned, same. You know, I was really impressed with him last year. He did a nice job in protection as well as run blocking. You know, C.J. Stroud stayed pretty clean last year because of the way that offensive line played, and I've heard nothing but good things about Whippler in terms of his character, being a real smart guy. And you know, hey, you can't have enough centers, right? I mean, last year, I think the Browns went through 4 of them, it seemed like, before we got to week 1. So, yeah, 2 really nice acquisitions.
Yeah, and again, at 4th and 6th round, if they don't work out, 4th and 6th rounders usually do not work out. So if they do, you have really found something. This is also interesting, and you'll love this. Cedric Tillman, 3 games against top competition. So we're going with Georgia and Alabama from 2021-2022. 24 catches, 420 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So again, for Tennessee against 2 of the elite, he was at his best.
I'll be honest with you, Dave, when they hand out the bio in the media room, that was the first thing that I looked at with Tillman, was how he played against, Georgia and Alabama. And that the Georgia game of 2 years ago, he had 10 catches for 200 yards. And that, as we know, I think they all 11 of those guys were drafted, and I think even their backups got drafted. I mean, that was like a legendary, college defense a couple of years ago. And Tillman, had a terrific game against him. And I've heard nothing but good things about this kid as well. He had some ankle injuries last year that slowed him down, but he's from an NFL family. Again, a high production in the SEC, and to me that's a big box check.
Tom Withers from the Associated Press and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll take a look at that quarterback ranking that we talked about a little bit earlier in the NFL. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE with Tom Withers from the Associated Press. This is Cody Benjamin of CBSSports.com's list of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. Number 1, Patrick Mahomes. Number 2, Joe Burrow. Jalen Hurts is 3. Josh Allen 4. Justin Herbert, Aaron Rodgers, Lamar Jackson, Trevor Lawrence, Dak Prescott. And checking in at number 10 is Deshaun Watson. Cleveland's betting a lot of money that Watson's post-suspension Browns debut was an anomaly. It probably was. He has been a Pro Bowl caliber pocket passer for 4 of his first 5 active NFL seasons. And Tom, I can't argue with that list. It goes Mahomes, Burrows, Hurts, Allen, Herbert, Rodgers, Jackson, Lawrence, Dak Prescott, and Watson at 10. That seems very fair.
I would agree with you. And as I mentioned earlier, I think it's changeable, right? I think on any given week you could swap number 6 for number 10 and vice versa. So, listen, he's got his work cut out for him to prove to everybody that he belongs in that top 5 again, right? And the line has gotten longer since he last played at an elite level. So I think what Browns fans have to hope for is, what the team talked about a lot last year was that he was going to have to knock off that rust, that it was a real thing, and it was a real thing, right? I mean, we only saw really a half of football where he played at the level of Deshaun Watson of 2020. I think it was that second half of the Washington game was the only time where we said, okay, there he is. Other than that, it was difficult to watch at times. I mean, there were moments where he got outside of the pocket and you saw that natural ability that he has, unlike just about any quarterback in the league. His ability to elude tacklers and his vision downfield and able to thread passes on the money. We just didn't see enough of it. And I think that's why, the start of this season, Dave, is going to be those first 4 or 5 games. They're going to be, I'm waiting for that schedule to come out because it's going to be interesting to see who they're matched up against. And, you got to hope that he gets off to a good start. You got to hope that that year now with Kevin Stefanski has allowed them to kind of figure out what it is that Deshaun does best and how they can maximize that and how they can incorporate the running game with him. And obviously they went out and they got him some speed and they got him some more targets. So that certainly can help. But yeah, I have no problem with that list of 1 through 10. I'll put Mahomes at 1 and everybody else kind of a notch below. But, just look in I'll be honest with you, just look in the AFC North. I mean, I'm not sure. He's the 3rd best quarterback in the conference at best. In the division at best, right? So if that's your starting off point, then he's got some work to do to quiet the doubters.
How important do you think it is that Kevin Stefanski designs his offense around Deshaun Watson? He hasn't had a quarterback. I wouldn't do it around Baker Mayfield. I wouldn't do it around Jacoby Brissett. I would do it around Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, it's not whether you wanted to do it, you couldn't do it, right?
Right.
That was the problem, I think, for Kevin the last couple of years, is that he was really handcuffed in terms of what he could do and how much they wanted to show. And, we would watch in practice, when Deshaun would run out of the pistol or, whatever they, shotgun sometimes or whatever. And when they would incorporate some RPOs, you saw a Browns offense that you had never seen before. And so we've seen glimpses of that in practice, and they were only able to incorporate, a little bit of that in my mind over those last 6 games last year. So yeah, I think that's everything, Dave. It's that marriage between Kevin and Deshaun, and where that's going to go is really going to determine what this team is about, not only this year, but for the next several.
So as you look at this roster, and rookie mini camp starts, I believe it's next Friday. What do you think of it? What are your thoughts of this roster? We've been around this for a while. How good is this roster as it's currently constructed?
Well, we'll see. I mean, it's, on paper it looks good, and on paper it looks like they address the needs that they have. But, the variable, Dave, that, none of us ever knows is that the old injury bug, and, you're a blown knee away from losing a star player at any time. And, that just changes everything. And when you have to start asking guys who aren't ready to take on roles that they're not ready for, then, you get situations like we've had over the last few years here. So, I really like what they've done with that defensive front in this offseason. I still think the linebacking situation needs to be addressed a little more detailed, if you will. I think Anthony Walker coming back, I think we all, until Anthony Walker left, we didn't realize how valuable he was to this team. And that's why I think even that, as we talked about earlier, the McLeod pickup for that secondary is important. You need that at each of those groups. You need that veteran guy who is going to take whatever the message is that's going out by that position coach and reinforce it, not only in the meeting room, but on the field. So I think that was vital as well. We've talked about their need to add to that wide receiver room, and they've done that. My God, they're going to have about 16 guys on the field, I think, for that first practice, which is great, though. I mean, competition is going to bring out the best in all of those guys. I think we haven't talked about him at all, but I think it's a real credit. And after finding out more of what he dealt with, the fact that Amari Cooper even finished last season, given the injury that he was dealing with, that core muscle injury that he had surgery on, really, I think speaks a lot to Amari and what he's meant to this team and what he could mean to this team going forward. So, listen, it's all going to be about that quarterback. It's all going to be about number 4 and how he performs. But in terms of just looking at the roster, yeah, it's a talented roster up and down. And you just got to hope everything works out for them.
Yeah, and I'm with you. We said that last year. Last year's roster looked pretty talented. And then, you kind of said, well, their defensive tackles are young, and that didn't work. Let me ask you this. Does Jim Schwartz' style of defense and the defensive tackles they have brought in, Tomlinson, Ika, Maurice Hurst, does that help the linebacking core? Because a lot of times you're seeing offensive linemen that were getting on top of those linebackers pretty consistently.
Yeah, I think he'll do a better job of kind of disguising things and hiding those guys that are a little undersized, but I think they will be aggressive from the secondary, to your point. I also think they're going to want to maul people up front, and so I think you're going to see maybe a different style with that front four in terms of, their technique and how they want to. And the thing that I really wish, and I'm sure Schwartz, once he got here, has been thinking about it as well, is how do you get Myles Garrett more opportunities? What schemes can you draw up to load up his side of the ball so he can come free? And if he doesn't come free, he's going to create a double or triple team where somebody else on his side is going to get free. So listen, Schwartz has a lot to work with. I think the other thing that, and this is no knock on Joe Woods, but I'm not so sure the Browns did a good job of adjusting and adapting in game last year, and I think that's one of Schwartz's strong points as well. So it's one thing to have a nice roster of players at your disposal and schemes to run, but I think it's more about then once the game starts and the offense starts making adjustments to you, then you got to adjust back. And I think Schwartz and his experience is going to mean a lot for the Browns that way.
Tom Withers, as always, thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much, Tom.
You're quite welcome. Have a good one.
Tom Withers, make sure you check him out. Always really good coverage of all the Cleveland sports for the Associated Press. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll talk Guardians. Paul Hoynes, Guardians beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. Sports4CLE continues. We turn our attention to the Guardians. Headed home after dropping 2 of 3 to the Yankees. Guardians dropped to 14-17 on the year. So 3 games under 500. They drop another series. Offense still can't get rolling. Bullpen has been used and is now having issues. And this from Tom Withers, a reminder, 15-16 at this point a season ago. Let's welcome in Guardians beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com, Paul Hoynes. And Hoynes, it sure seems like they're way off last year's pace. Maybe that was because we tend to forget last year was supposed to be a year where they sorted through some of the young guys.
Yeah, they really came out of nowhere last year, Dave. And, they were a great baseball story. This year, the expectations were different. But the slow start out of the gate is the same. And with that, I think, the disappointment is a little greater. People are, they're expecting better things from this ball club.
Yeah, and we were talking before. In fairness, they've been missing, you could argue, their second and third starters for all but 2 starts through the 31 games that they've played. And I'm speaking of Tristan McKenzie, Aaron Savale. As you look at it, what is your level of concern? You see them every day. How concerned are you with this at this juncture in the season?
Well, I think the rotation is okay. They've brought up Tanner Bibee and Logan Allen, 2 rookies that have done really a great job in their 4 starts. It looks like Peyton Battenfield is going to get another start Friday. So that's 3 rookies they've got in the rotation right now to go along with Quantrill and Bieber. And the rookies aren't getting deep into the games. They're protecting them. They keep them around 90, 95 pitches. And I think that's exposed the bullpen a little bit. But I don't think the rotation is an issue. I think the offense and the bullpen, which is getting overworked a little bit, are the issues.
Yeah, so you mentioned that Battenfield will get the start tomorrow. That means Zach Plesac is not in the rotation. And as you mentioned, the three rookies in the rotation. And you could argue, other than other than Bieber, those three guys have given you the best starts that you've gotten from the starting pitching. But let's shift the focus. What happens with Zach Plesac? Any thoughts? Do you have any idea?
That's the that's the unknown, the big mystery, Dave. Obviously, with Battenfield getting the start Friday, they've got to do something with Plesac. He still has options left, so they could option him to Columbus when left-hander Sam Henkes comes back. He's expected to join the team this weekend for the Twins series, so that would be a logical move. Or they could also maybe try to trade Plesac or DFA him. But right now everything is on the table. I think they've been discussing this all week. Chris Antonetti and 2 or 3 other of the front office people were on a road trip to Boston and New York. They saw what Plesac did Saturday at Fenway, where he gave up 5 runs, 8 hits, 3 1/3 innings, and really put him in a 6-1 hole. They came back and almost won that game, only to lose it, 8-7 in 10 innings when the bullpen blew it again. So, I think Plesac, the opposition is hitting .374 against him. He's got an inflated ERA. I think they, one way or the other, they've got to do something with him. And I think their option is to take him out of the rotation. Now, where it goes from there, we'll find out in a couple days.
And that's coming off a season last year where he just didn't pitch well. So it isn't like it's a slow start, because it's a continuation from a year ago. It's gotten a little worse, but it is a continuation from a year ago.
Yeah, he went 3-12 last year, and he's always been kind of to me, Dave, he's been kind of a hard luck pitcher. 2 years ago, he's the only pitcher in history to start a game when 3 times when his team has been no hit. That was in 2021. He lost 2 games, lost 2 of those 3 games. I mean, that doesn't happen often, Dave. And in 2022, they scored. They didn't score. They scored under 3 runs a game for him. He still goes 3-13, or 2-13, whatever it was. But this year he's really kind of struggled. He's had maybe 1 good start out of 5. I think, like you said, Dave, this has been, the kind of a stone rolling down the hill, and I think the Guardians have seen enough.
The other thing that has to be at least a little bit concerning, Emmanuel Clase blew a save last night, so he's now blown 3 this year. He only blew 4 saves all of last year. Velocity is down a little bit. Level of concern, you can, with a pitcher that's a power pitcher, the weather, people don't want to hear it, but the weather plays into it. You can't get loose. You can't really let it go like you'd like to. What's your level of concern with Clase?
Well, I think there is some concern, Dave, just because, he's been getting hit. Last year he hardly got hit at all, it seemed like. But, 2 saves, and Boston and the Yankees really took some good hacks against them. They're not, driving the ball out of the park, but they're making contact. They're moving runners. It's just, I don't know if that, his velo has dropped from 100 miles an hour to about 97, 98 in the last 2 years. Now, does that make that much of a difference? It doesn't seem like it would, but I think, he throws 2 pitches. He hasn't thrown his 4-seamer much. The cut fastball is his best pitch, but people have been waiting on it a little bit. He was having some problems with the pitch clock earlier this year. It kind of disturbed his routine, but he came back from that. Last night he said he's made adjustments there, but he said he says the velo will come. He's got to make some mechanical adjustments, but he's healthy. And we'll see what's there. And, in saying all that, Dave, he's still 10 for 13 in save situations. He's still leading the top lead with 10 saves. So it's not like, he's cratered.
No, that's very fair. And, that he's had so many save opportunities, though, because it's a one-run game either way with the Guardians, it seems like. Let me ask you this. So we're in early May. Best thing you've seen from the Guardians through the first month of the season, thing that concerns you the most first month of the season?
Yeah, the thing I like the most, I really like the way Bieber has pitched. And I like what Logan Allen and Tanner Bibee have given that rotation. I think Bieber, might be his best start, in his career. Just the way he's manipulated the strike zone. He's been a different pitcher every game out. He's not throwing that hard. But he's really mixing his pitches well. So that's a plus. Offensively, Dave, I think is a big concern for me. We haven't seen, this. We didn't think this team was going to hit for power. They didn't hit for power last year, but they've hit 17 home runs this season. And through 31 games this season. I mean, they don't score runs. They score runs. It's like they're averaging, I think, just over 4 runs a game. I don't know how many games you're going to win like that, and. Every game, I think over 50% of their games have been decided by 1 run. You put a lot of pressure on the bullpen that way. They've just this offense is a concern to me. That's where my main concern would be.
Yeah, the lack of when you have guys that hit the ball out of the park, it's you get a walk and a hit and then a home run and it's 3 runs. With the Indians, you need so many things to line up and so many guys to do what they are capable of doing in order to get that production.
Yeah, like the first inning, the first inning Wednesday night, they sent 7 guys to the plate and scored 2 runs. If the Yankees did that, they'd score 5. And even though the Yankees didn't have, Judge and Stanton in that lineup, they still out-homered Cleveland 5-0, in the 3-game series. So, they're built differently, obviously. We knew that going in, but, this is just like, as Terry Francona said, for the Cleveland to win, they've got to win the hard way. They've got to get on base. They've got to steal bases. They've got to hit with runners in scoring position. And when one thing doesn't go right, kind of the wheels come off the cart there.
Paul Hoynes, Guardians beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we will continue talking Guardians. Sports for CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Guardians with Paul Hoynes, Guardians beat reporter from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. So Hoynes, we mentioned 3 games under 500. They start their longest homestand of the season tomorrow, Friday, against the Twins. What do you think, if you see this or this and this, what do you think is a good sign that the Guardians are getting things rolling?
Well, I think it's good they're back in the AL Central, for one thing. They've only played 3 games in their own division, so far through 31 games. That's with 3 in Detroit, and they lost 2 of those. But now they're going to see the Twins. The Twins are in first place. I think we'll get a better idea just how they stack up in the division. Hopefully the weather warms up. Hopefully that bullpen gets straightened out. With Henkes coming back, maybe he can take some of the workload off of James Karinchak and Emmanuel Clase. And they've just got to get this offense going, Joe. I think a big part of that offense, Ahmed Rosario, just is in a swing mode right now, Joe. I mean, David. I mean, he is like, I mean, you throw it anywhere near the plate, he's swinging at it. He went 4 for 26 on the road trip, and struck out 10 times. I mean, we know that. We know he's a free swinger, but we also know, when the weather warms up, this guy is kind of a hit machine. So they've got to get him going, in that number 2 spot where he's, he kind of sits between Kwan and Ramirez and creates some scoring opportunities.
Yeah, in theory, if he starts hitting, Ramirez sees better pitches. That gives the ability for Naylor and Bell, and both of those guys showed some signs of life. But it's been a struggle offensively without question. This is from the Bleacher Report. Big-name MLB players at risk of losing their starting roles. And one of them that they list is Oscar Gonzalez for the Guardians, hitting 186, 208 on-base percentage, 286 slugging, just 1 homer in 72 plate appearances spanning 24 games. Hoynes, it seems like it's going to end up being, to me, it looks like it's been a platoon with Will Brennan going against right-handers and Gonzalez going against lefties.
Yeah, Gonzalez lost that starting job in spring training, and I still don't know what he did wrong, Dave. I mean, this is the guy that, was a postseason hero last year. He came up and energized that lineup and, hit 9 home runs. He had, 290? And, all of a sudden, he's kind of a spare part. So, he didn't lose a job in the regular season. He never got a job.
Yeah, and again, when he's had the opportunity, you can tell he's chasing some things and trying to do a little bit too much. I think he's trying to get back into the lineup against righties. Some is kind of the mindset.
Yeah, and I don't know, Dave. They have always platooned. Francona really does a good job with that. But in this case, I think you're hurting both guys, Brennan and Gonzalez. Neither one is hitting that much. Brennan had that, really good stretch there. Then they ran into in 8 games, they faced 7 left-handed starters. So Gonzalez, got those at bats. And when Brennan came back, he had lost his stroke. So, I don't know if you've got to decide which one. There's got to be one guy that plays out there. But right now, that platoon isn't working.
This also from the Bleacher Report. Early predictions for the 2023 MLB trade deadline. And they say it's a big year for middle infielders on the move. Ahmed Rosario is a name almost certain to be on the block. Guardians locked up Andres Jimenez, long-term deal in March. They've got Brian Rocchio, who could be ready for the big league gigs in a few months' time. I think they're going to, and again, I don't dismiss that without question because the Rosario final year of his deal. I think Terry Francona and the Guardians, if they're going to trade somebody like that, they don't think they're where they want to be at the trade deadline.
That's a great point, because, Francona loves Rosario. He thinks him and Ramirez, kind of ignite that offense at the top of the lineup. So for them to make a deal like that, I would think, it's not a white flag deal, but it's pretty close to it. And yes, they have a flock of middle infielders, waiting for a chance to play in the big leagues. But, Rosario's a proven player. He's got a track record. We know eventually he's going to hit. So, for them to make a deal like that, I think a lot more would have to go wrong with this club than goes right.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And they play the more balanced schedule, so you don't have as many games against AL Central teams. But nobody in the AL Central is running away with this. The White Sox are a mess. The Royals are a mess. The Tigers are a mess. The Twins are the only one above 500.
Yeah, I mean, the Twins could have, if they had really kind of played better, they could have buried the whole division. You know, like you said, Kansas City, Detroit, and the White Sox are already, partially cooked or even out of it. Cleveland has kept contact at least, and now we get a chance this weekend just to see where these two teams line up and how they look at each other eye to eye.
Paul Hoynes, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Hoynesy.
Thanks, Dave.
Paul Hoynes, make sure you check him out. Great stuff on the Guardians beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.